I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and I noticed a picture on the wall that had an interesting pattern, sort of like this. And I started to think that that was actually a virtual studio and that the picture was procedurally generated. And I thought it wouldn't be too hard to make a procedurally generated texture like that. And so this is what I came up with. It's basically a series of these quadrant circles that are positioned randomly and then intersecting. And I used the exclusive OR function to create the intersection of the circles. To get started, I'm going to start with a new document. I'll make it 1024 by 1024 pixels. Create that. I'll fill it with black. And I'll add a live procedural texture filter. I'm going to add a single equation, and I'll assign it to all three channels. I'm going to start by adding a real custom input variable. I'll call that scale, and I'll set that to 4. I'm going to start with a coordinate system, var, v equals vec2 for rx comma ry times a divided by w. In this case, the two-element vector, one component is assigned to the red channel, the other component is assigned to the green channel. Now I'm going to go and create another variable. I'll call it t1, and I'm going to have this be the length of v. So that's my circular shape. Now I want this to be a repeating circular wedge, and I only want a quarter of the circle showing. So what I'm going to do is take the fraction of v, add another parentheses there. And so that's sort of my circular shape, and I could have, you can see I have the 4 different quadrants. Now I want these to be randomly positioned, so show up randomly throughout the image area. I'm also going to add a step function, and I'm going to set the radius equal to 1, so the radius of my circle will be 1. So anything less than 1 will be black. I'm going to drag this over until I just see the one quadrant over here. And I'm going to see if I can manipulate this. So one thing I can do is I could subtract 1 from this, and that gives me a different quadrant of the circle. So that worked, but there should be 2 others, right? I have that one and the one I showed before. Now to do the other 2, I have to create a vector, a vec2, and I'm going to make it 0, 1, and that gives me this corner. And now if I change this to 1, 0, it'll give me the other corner. So when I just subtract 1, remember that that is subtracting 1 from each element. So it's like subtracting vector 1, 1. So I could do that. And then what I started out originally was like subtracting 0, 0, because I wasn't doing anything to it. So I have 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1 are the 4 vectors, and with those 4 vectors I can get any sector of the circle. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to define a new variable. I'm going to call it x1, and this is going to equal dir I of v. And I'm just going to take a look at that. The dir function returns a random vector that has a random length between 0 and 1 and a random direction between 0 and 360 degrees. Here it's pixelated because I chose the diri version of the function. and so there's no interpolation between the different values. Now what I want to do is subtract off only values of 1. So these have fractional values, so I need to take the floor of this function. I'm going to do the floor. That will round it down. Okay, and so everything went away, so I need to add an offset to this. I'm going to add a -1 to 1 range input. I'll just leave it at B. I'm going to call this BW because it's going to make a black and white pattern. And I'm going to add B inside the parentheses of the floor function. And that'll give me the ability to make an offset like this. So now I'm getting a whole number of values coming through. So now I'm going to apply this to my T1. So I'll show my T1 here. Still looks like that. But if I add x1 to that, now a random vector to this, okay, now I can get these to show up randomly. And I can get, let's zoom out a little bit. Now I can adjust this. If I bring this all the way back down to 0, it's filled, and I can see that all of the quadrants are present. So that's the basic pattern I wanted. Now I'm going to make a duplicate of the x1 variable and paste it right next to it here, and I'll call that x2. And I want that to be uncorrelated with x1, so I'm just going to subtract the width of the document in pixels from the first one and add it to the second one. So that'll just spread my random numbers out so they won't be strongly correlated with each other. I also want to change this custom input to another -1 to 1 slider, C, and I'll call that one gray. Now I'm going to copy my T1 variable and paste it over here. And I'm going to change that to a T2, and I'm going to change this to an x2. So I have two random variables, and they're modulating the two texture variables. And now I'm just going to take my exclusive OR function, which is T1 times 1 minus T2 plus T2 times 1 minus T1. So there's my pattern. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay, now I want to have, instead of just 2 tones, I want to have 3 tones. So what I'm going to do is to divide my T2 by 2. And that'll give me a grade level. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to add a gradient map to this. I'm going to use this gradient map. And then I'll just drag that down on top of the procedural texture. And then the last thing I want to do is I'm going to adjust this until I get a pattern that I like. So I just slide these over. I want a little more open space. Now it is asymmetric. I do get more of these lens shapes going off in this direction, but I can move it around and try to find an area that doesn't have so much of that. And it might be possible to tweak this offset to get a little less of that. But these can be used to sort of adjust the pattern and change the density and the orientation of the pattern. All right, well, I think I came up with sort of a fun pattern. It has sort of an abstract art feel and has sort of a nice look to it. Let me know if you come up with anything based on this pattern or one of my others, and let me know if you have any other comments or questions. And thanks for watching.